Sportsbiz Chat with DP and McGee, the podcast where we take a sometimes irreverent, sometimes cynical, and yes, even a sometimes serious look at the business of sports. I'm your co-host, Tim McGee.
And I'm David Parro.
David, I think I know what's on your mind, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What do you got?
Well, first of all, this is the first show in a while that we haven't had a guest. We just needed to take a break from this amazing run of guests that we've had.
I know.
I almost couldn't take it anymore. It was too stimulating for us, I think. So yeah, we don't have a guest, but we'll be back next week with another great guest. Listen, there are a couple blockbusters I think to talk about. I want to start at one of the places we left off last week, and that's because the NFL season opened up this weekend, and we had talked about it being a big year, and the NFL somewhat complaining to Nielsen about its reporting, and Nielsen's come at this thing with big data, and completely not surprising to either of us, I'm sure. The number, for a lot of reasons, the numbers coming out of this first weekend for the NFL were just absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, and the only reason they weren't better were because of the rain or the thunder delay Thursday night in Philly.
Right. So the Thursday night game, despite that weather delay, had a peak at 34.3 million viewers.
That's
big data, baby.
That's 10%, more than 10% of the population of the U.S.
Yeah. That unbelievable Bills-Ravens game on Sunday night, 24.7 for NBC. The YouTube Sao Paulo game when the Chargers upset the Chiefs. I guess that was an upset. It was a great game by Herbert and the Chargers to beat the Chiefs. That got, and again, that was YouTube.
Yeah.
Streaming, 7.3 million average per minute audience global, because that was part of the reason they were doing that. U.S. viewership of 16.2. Chiefs would normally do a lot better than that, obviously, if they were on one of the network partners. But I would say a strong performance given that it was carried on YouTube.
Yes, I would agree. I think some people were complaining about how the numbers were reported. I always go back to what one of our past guests, Mark Lazarus, who's now chairman of the new offshoot from NBC Universal, but he was chairman of NBC Universal at the time, and what he said was, he was talking about streaming services in general. He said we'd all like to be able to grade our own homework. And I think, the point being is there needs to be one consistent, I use this term somewhat loosely, objective measurement of audience size so that everybody's got the same chance to get advertising dollars. If a streaming service is reporting numbers that can't be trusted, then that's not a fair fight with the Foxes and the ESPNs and the NBCs of the world.
Yeah, we had this similar story back in the advent, talk about dating us, the advent of the cable time, the cable era, right?
Yeah.
Because things were a little different judging ESPN versus, say, CBS, NBC, or ABC. And we got over that. Agree, I think Nielsen in its overall goal to certainly, I wouldn't say appease, but make sure that its partners are getting the accurate information and to some degree appease partners such as the NFL, that they got to create this consistency. Now, I don't know if the NFL will actually like that, right? So they have one game on YouTube. They loving these numbers coming out of NBC, CBS, and Fox, of course. But that number is a little bit different when it comes from a straight streaming service. I would still say that's pretty big. And as more and more people understand where to get it, I think it was all. By the way, I watched it straight on YouTube, but I think it was available through YouTube TV as well as kind of a separate line. I could have done that because I have YouTube TV. I didn't see that. I should have looked that up. But I didn't want to forget to say something in another positive indication. I think one of the things you said last week about the NFL was they won't be satisfied until there's complete global domination. Certainly this game in Sao Paulo, looking at the global audience, starts thinking about that. They also, and then you mentioned NBC, they're already sold out of their inventory for the Super Bowl. It's on NBC this year. I think they originally went to market, my understanding, at 7 million, and then had to up it because the demand was so high, or had to up it. They chose to up it because that made sense.
Yeah, talk about a big year coming up for NBC Sports.
Yeah.
You've got the Olympics, the Super Bowl. They're going to have the NBA All-Star game. That's a pretty good first
Back with the
quarter.
NBA, yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty good first quarter right there.
Right. I think we got to get Mark back on.
Yeah, or Matt Hahn, who's now
Yeah.
running.
Right.
Yeah, Matt's a friend.
Right. Okay, we've blown smoke up the NFL's ass enough here. What do you have?
Well, I think absent the NFL, and before we go off the NFL, I think the NFL is probably like, I don't know, a season away from just telling advertisers, just give us all your money.
Right.
Just don't even advertise anywhere else.
Wait.
Just give us all your money.
Wait, one thing we do have to add, because your seasons as fans started as we typically expect them to. You Jets had to play the Steelers with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback and lose on a field goal, right?
Yeah,
And the Bears are up. The Bears are playing Monday night. Very exciting. First half, everyone feeling good about Caleb Williams. And then when they gave up that field goal at the end of the first half, I knew it. I knew it was coming. And they collapsed similar to the way the Ravens did in that unbelievable Josh Allen comeback on the Sunday night game. So we're both 0-1.
Hey,
No surprises.
Hey, Carolyn, you know those trips you wanted to make on Sundays in October to watch the leaves change and go apple picking and stuff? Yeah, I'm free.
I'm free. Just needed one weekend to determine whether I would be.
And now they go to Buffalo this weekend. So yeah, but before we go, a more serious story on the NFL. The Bears now pretty much giving up on having a downtown stadium and going back to Arlington Heights out in the suburbs, despite the fact that they had some conflict with city elders in Arlington Heights about the tax situation. But it looks like that's where the new stadium is going to be built.
Yeah, and it was just hours before the game went off that they made this somewhat declaration that is absolutely their intention. When Kevin Warren, the former Big Ten commissioner, who's now the president of the Bears in this post-Virginia McCaskey era, and that looks like it's Soldier Field will be no longer. That's been an ongoing story that we've watched a bit. I understand it. City's a tough place to get stuff done. They have the land out there in Arlington Heights, but it's going to be disappointing. I mean, I'll tell you, Tim, when I lived in Chicago and lived in the western suburbs, and I went to a lot of games, and I'd take that drive in and turn on Lakeshore Drive with the stadium, both the old version of it and the new version of it. And you'd see Soldier Field there and the fans gathering in the lakefront and the lake. I'm going to miss that. I'll tell you that.
Nothing is forever, though. If you think about, Detroit was out in Pontiac for many years and it came back downtown with Ford Field. There seems to be, you look at some of the more recent stadiums being built, and when I say recent, I'm going back 20 plus years, but, Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte is right in uptown Charlotte. Mercedes-Benz Stadium is in Midtown Atlanta. SoFi is an exception, but there seems to be a trend to building downtown if you can.
Yeah, but that's because LA is an exception as well. I mean, LA is basically a community of different areas in LA County. I don't know. I mean, the Bears headquarters is in Lake Forest, Illinois, far, I think, a far north suburb on the lake. Beautiful town. And that's where they are. That's where Hallis Hall is. Mm-hmm. Arlington Heights is closer than I think it is. It's a northwest suburb than coming downtown. But, the Bears aren't the kind of people that just play this game and then turn around and spend it. I mean, they're a family-owned team. So we'll see. But, yeah, I saw that story. I'm trying not to think about it too much, but it is what it is. I mean, sports owners do what sports owners do, and they have to build where they can get the best deal. I think they'll be able to draw fans. That's not an issue now if they continue to play like they did in the fourth quarter of Monday night. I mean, who knows? But
outside the NFL, the biggest story in sports right now, I think, is what's going on out in LA with the Clippers. Pablo Torre, host of a very popular podcast, Pablo Torre Finds Out, recently reported that Kawhi Leonard of the Clippers signed a $28 million no-show contract with a former team sponsor company called Aspiration. And not coincidentally, Steve Ballmer, the owner of the Clippers, the eighth most richest man in the world, was an investor in Aspiration. What makes this a story is Pablo Torre is reporting from conversations he had with former employees, because Aspiration has gone bankrupt, is that Kawhi Leonard signed this deal as a way to circumvent the salary. Now, if that proves to be the case, and my understanding is the NBA is looking very closely at this story, that's huge. That is a huge story. We don't know if that's the case yet, but we certainly need to find out.
This is such a massive story, and I couldn't help but think about the thing that made, in my opinion, Adam Silver commissioner after he took over as commissioner from David Stern was when he banned Donald Sterling as the owner of the Clippers for him basically being a racist.
Yeah, he was
being a racist, not basically being a racist.
Silver was universally praised for the way he handled that. And what I said back at the time is, if you put a list of the top 100 or first 100 things that an NBA commissioner was going to have to deal with after David Stern's passing, or retirement, excuse me, he passed later, after his retirement, that would not be on the list.
Right.
Having to discipline a racist owner. But he did, and he handled it very well. And that led to what at the time was a record-breaking sales price for a NBA franchise to Steve Ballmer.
Yeah, so I think there's so many different things to look at this. I agree with you, Tim. This is a massive story, and the NBA needs to take it seriously. By the way, there's a Board of Governors meeting starting, I think, today in the NBA. What do you think they're going to be thinking? So there's a few things that I've been pondering on this. One is, it almost would surprise me if Ballmer, very smart guy, very wealthy guy, was the only one that's thought of this or tried this, if he is implicated in this. But one of the things that I think Pablo Torre seems to be really good at, and I'm somewhat new to his podcast, it is highly entertaining, by the way, is that he pulls a lot of strings. He goes down a lot of interesting, some may say rabbit holes. He has a lot of detractors. And one of the big detractors is the former lead owner of the Mavs, still an investor, still a part owner, but not on the Board of Governors, is Mark Cuban. And he did an interview with Pablo after this. His position, and I think Mark Cuban is a very, very bright guy. He says there's no way, if Ballmer did do this, that it would be shocking that would mean Ballmer's not as smart as Mark Cuban thinks Steve Ballmer is. I think that's a weird take, personally, because Ballmer wants to win an NBA championship. This guy is so driven and motivated as an owner. The building of the Intuit Dome, by the way, which Aspiration was a major sponsor of, right?
And apparently offered a lot more money for the naming rights than Intuit did, which then Ballmer turned it down because he felt that Intuit was a more stable company. So on one hand, he's a big investor in this company, but on the other hand, he doesn't think enough of them to take their money for the naming rights deal. Now, in hindsight, it was a smart decision because Aspiration's gone bankrupt. Right. But it doesn't; those two things are diametrically opposed to one another.
Well, if he's such a smart investor, why was he so easily duped by these guys? I mean, the Aspiration duped a lot of people, a lot of A-list celebrities.
Dispel the rumor that your net worth correlates exactly to your intelligence and your smarts.
No doubt.
I'm not saying Steve Ballmer's not a bright guy. I'm not saying he's not a smart guy. But he would not be the first businessman who's done something unethical or illegal.
Exactly why I think Cuban's take is a goofy one. I mean, is he defending him as a friend? He says he has no, horse in that race. I don't know. I'll take him at his word on that. Or maybe just defending the quality of NBA owners, since he had been a major one.
Maybe
and a very visible one, as is Ballmer. I mean, those guys were two of the most visible owners in the game. But nothing, when your goal is winning and success, and particularly in that market, when you're always the second fiddle to the Lakers, what he would do, and he's done an amazing job as an owner. He's universally heralded as a great owner that believes in the players, that is bringing excitement back to that franchise. And he signed Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard, the most famously silent superstar in the game. Barely ever speaks. Doesn't do that much endorsement, but he does look to maximize his money. The other thing I have to say, and I do not want to forget this, when did no-show contracts leap out of the screen from The Sopranos and start like earning its way into endorsement conversations? But this is a perfect use of it, because Kawhi Leonard, as Pablo Torre reports, never did anything. And everything in the contract, this was the amazing part to me, said he only had to do stuff if he basically felt. I'm paraphrasing. If he felt like it. And the closest thing to a smoking gun on this, Tim, I think, is the bit that said this contract is in place, a personal endorsement deal with a superstar in the league, multiple championships, I think multiple MVPs. Kawhi Leonard only was in place if he remained a member of the Clippers.
Yeah. Listen, there's so many smoking guns at this point. It's like the gunfight at the 𝗓𝗃 Corral. The other thing to keep in mind is that this is not the first time that Leonard has been involved in questionable sponsorship deals. So his uncle, who represents him in a lot of his marketing initiatives.
Hey, Tim, what's his uncle's name?
Robinson, Leonard Robinson.
But I think
Robinson.
he goes by Uncle something, and now I'm forgetting. I figured you would remember it.
Yeah, but anyway, so when he was negotiating on his nephew's behalf with the Raptors, he asked for an ownership stake, which is completely not allowed. He also asked the Raptors to guarantee sponsorship dollars, again, not allowed. So, there is a history here. I happen to like Mark Cuban a lot. I enjoy his takes on things. I think he's a really smart guy. Maybe they should go back and look at some of the sponsorship deals involving Luka Doncic or Dirk Nowitzki.
That's what I'm thinking. Well, if he's defending Ballmer because of potential skeletons, then that's a whole nother thing. We aren't suggesting that. We're just saying that would be interesting. Clearly, the NBA is going to have to look at every deal like this. And one of the funny things about that, though, is I think he has a regular agent, but Uncle just injects himself in everything he does on these personal levels. He's always like asking for the more stuff. Again, that's besides the point of this story. But
listen, I loved my Uncle Tom, God bless his soul. Told me the first joke I ever remember hearing as a small child. I don't think I'd have him representing me in marketing deals.
Mm. We'll see. If they bring the hammer down, and even I was listening to some takes from Bill Simmons saying they're gonna bring him down. They have to do something, because just even on the way it looks. Now, I think that's a little bit of a ridiculous take too. I think they're going to have to find something, or are they going to try to defend? Like, what's Ballmer going to? Ballmer and the Clippers are completely denying this, but their quotes seem to be leaving some room. So we shall see. But they're going to have to investigate every deal and verify that there is some return for any of these endorsements that coincided with the free agent signing, right?
Yep. Yeah. And just to add to the intrigue of the story, as we said earlier, Aspiration, the company in question, has gone bankrupt, but their CEO has pleaded guilty to wire fraud to the tune of $250 million that he defrauded investors. And I think 25 million of that, if I'm not mistaken, was from Steve Ballmer personally.
Well, I mean, totally side story, and we can get to stories like this when we launch Wait What? Environmental Consciousness with DP and McGee. But this is going to expose, this, I don't want to say fraud, but, the carbon credit concept when it comes to the environment and what it means and what people are investing in to make some people wealthy for stuff that's not necessarily delivering against. And David Sampson, who was on the show, former president of the Miami Marlins, won a World Series there. He was talking about some of the stuff that you do to get some of these designations for stadiums is a little less than above board, shall we say.
Yeah,
So there's a
interesting.
lot of things that need to be looked into here. And the aspiration thing, this just going out and like we're saving the world by planting trees. That was it. That was their motto, was planting trees. But they then doled out that assignment to other people. Who knows if it ever happened? And they raised millions and millions and millions of dollars. And to your point, the founder has pleaded guilty. The company's bankrupt, and Steve Ballmer is now, staring down a really interesting investigation.
Yeah. But wait, there's more. What I also read is that Aspiration had a number of celebrity endorsers, who weren't paid even close to the amount that Kawhi Leonard was paid, including guys like Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert Downey Jr. Now, somebody like Leonardo DiCaprio is probably getting, depending on the category and stuff, he's probably getting $20 million for an endorsement deal. And I would venture to say that he's a bigger star than Kawhi Leonard.
Well, Kawhi Leonard's a really good basketball player.
Okay, but in terms of if you looked at their Q scores,
I'm not questioning.
You looked at, yeah.
I'm not questioning that. Leonardo DiCaprio is a major, major international star. But they were probably paid to that. Again, what makes it odd, that's an expensive deal for Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a massive deal. That's beyond what anyone pays endorsers in our business right now, except maybe some really good, college players. So and then to have some very simple stuff. So it wasn't even like the no-show part of the deliverables were big, because since they basically said you don't have to do whatever you don't want to do, they could have made it big. You have to have a full production day, right? And say a 6-hour production day where we'll shoot advertisements. We'll have this. And then he could have said no. They didn't even have that stuff in. It was like some social commentary, very, very simple stuff that he didn't have to do. No-show endorsement deal. I want one of those.
Sounds like a lot of people I worked with back in the day. I won't mention the company.
Have we exhausted? This is going to be a big one for us to follow, obviously, and it has so much implication across the board, not just in the NBA, but certainly the NBA, but in other sports. And maybe Ballmer was thinking he was the smart one because he was the one that actually figured this out, and someone helped him figure out in this what I will say awful company Aspiration. All right. You want to do a spotlight on sponsorship?
Yeah, let's.
How do we feel about these sponsorship deals?
Yeah, the first one that I wanted to talk about is Amex taking over for Visa as the payment services sponsor of the NFL. And I think this is a 30-year deal that Visa's had. Is that right?
Yeah,
go back to the 90s.
1995. I think it's the second longest running sponsorship behind Gatorade.
Right.
For league deals. I don't know how that happens. And I don't think that happens if Michael Lynch is still at Visa. And I know he's been gone for quite some time now, but I don't know how that happens.
Well, I think priorities change at companies. I think you and I both know that. I don't know if there's new leadership. Visa is still very heavily invested in sponsorship, of course, but the NFL was, and they may be going more focusing on the global aspect with Olympics and World Cup and Formula One, where they're invested as well now. But Amex. This is.
The NFL is global. If you're going for
Correct.
16 games outside the U.S., and those are league-controlled games, they're not.
Point.
So you don't have to have the team deals in place. So if you're Visa, you can activate around every one of those international games. Listen, kudos to Amex for getting it done. There's a woman at Amex named Shiz Suzuki who, followed not directly, but followed in a very huge footsteps by running sponsorships at AT&T before she moved over to Amex, and she's made some big deals in her time there.
She followed huge footsteps and made them even bigger, didn't she?
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I don't know if I go
joking.
that far.
I'm joking. But she is certainly making a mark. And I think this NFL thing is, I mean, it's interesting when you have that significant of a shift with brands of that stature, American Express and Visa, both global players. But I think that that is part of the motivation of Amex, is making sure they're getting more clearance globally. And I think their F1 league partnership, to your point, their league partnership with F1, which started in the Americas and now has since gone global, and they advertise everywhere. Anytime you go to an airport going to an F1 race, Amex is there. So they're creating that visibility and that connection. They have good creative out with that. And I'm excited to see what they're going to do with the NFL, and maybe they will take a truly global position like that. But that's a real big shift. One other I wanted to chat about was a new sponsorship, which seems to be a nice fit, is the Tide sponsorship, P&G brand, with the NWSL. And they have a clean kits, clean tackles, clean sheets, I think, strategy. That's going to be some of the part of the creative tag. And it feels like a good fit. So congratulations to the NWSL on a new big brand name in Tide, a brand that has been associated with sports in a lot of different ways over time, joining ranks with the NWSL.
Yeah, that's two big deals, two mega brands. Going back to Amex for just a second, they've also got that NBA deal. And that seems to be the one category that's continuing to spend. We mentioned last week with MasterCard, going on the team name with McLaren.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be one category in sponsorships that's continuing to spend. And I think because it's, there's going to be a lot of upheaval in payments in general.
Yeah. Well, because of my background at MoneyGram, and that was some of the chasing is there are multiple different types of companies that are in the payment space. Some were more focused on, cross-border payments, which is what MoneyGram's business was. And then there are some of these smaller startups now that are doing that. And then the large banks do that too, but they charge a huge fee, and that's where places like, the MoneyGrams of the world captured some audience. But then there is these payment systems, Visa, Amex, MasterCard, and there are other services that they want to start supplying and being able to send money in a similar way to some of these smaller, say, fintechs, payment services. They want to capture that as well. So there's reason for them to be in front of these audiences of people on the upper end of the economic scale and ones that are more on the lower end of that. Lots of reasons to be doing it, and people are trying to capture that space, and it's going to be, and sponsorship is being used to do that.
Yeah, if one of our listeners has a connection to any of the senior leaders at one of those companies, please put us in touch with them.
We're out on those right now.
We would love to. Listen, I've reached out to Shiz, not about the show. I've reached out to her in the past, and she's very busy, but we'd love to have her on the show.
Anything else before we head to break?
Just one other thing that I saw this morning, which was the NCAA is looking to change the way the transfer portal works in college football. So they're looking to make a move from 2 windows, one in the winter and one in the spring, to one 10-day portal window. I think it's in part because of what happens in the spring transfer portal window, in particular, the upheaval it creates. Last year, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 he left Tennessee, he didn't show up for the spring game, and then wound up at UCLA. So I can imagine the NCAA call this I am a leaving rule, to try to mitigate some of the mishigas that goes on in around that second transfer portal window. So we'll be watching that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've taken this subject very seriously, had guests talk about it. And once it gets to DP and McGee, I mean, people need to act on this stuff.
I would think so.
And take a break. Be right back. All right, we are back. It is that time of the show, Tim, where we take a little peek ahead, we give random shout-outs, we talk about the stuff that we forgot to talk about in the first section. So what do you have your eye on?
So we didn't talk about it in the opening round of our conversation, but congratulations to Aryna Sabalenka and Carlos Alcaraz for winning the U.S. Open. Carlos Alcaraz reclaiming his number 1 world ranking. But what I want to talk about is the president, and this is not political because I have an issue with this. It doesn't matter who's in office. When a president comes to a major sporting event, it causes such huge disruption. There were people I know who went to the finals where the president was there, and and they missed the first 30 minutes of the match, even though the match had been delayed to allow for the additional security. When a president comes in, I've worked with the White House on a program. When the White House is involved and the president or the first lady is involved, you are in the most secure place on earth. The way the Secret Service takes care of the presidential security is nothing short of amazing. But it causes incredible disruption to the fans who are going there. And now the president is also planning on going out to Ryder Cup. Now, I know you and I are trying to get free tickets to the Ryder Cup. We think we deserve them because of our place in the media world. But I wouldn't go on the day he was going. And that's not a political statement. I just wouldn't want to have to put up with that hassle. That's going to be difficult enough to get to that course, given where it is on Long Island and all of the regular traffic that goes on Long Island on a weekday or even a weekend. Yeah. So I don't know. I think it really, and yes, it's not Joe Fan, right, who's paying $700 to go to the Ryder Cup. It wasn't Joe Fan who was at the finals of the U.S. Open. But when you buy a ticket to go to a sporting event, you should be able to get in and out with a minimal amount of hassle.
Presidents have gone to major sporting events before, and it definitely is a super hassle. This president likes doing it probably more than most. He was the first president since Clinton to show up at the, maybe the second only to show up at the final of a U.S. Open.
Mm-hmm.
And it was announced late. And that probably added to it because they had to add the whole TSA thing. It definitely was awful from that standpoint, and people have a right to be annoyed by it. But this president is going to go, and there was no surprise that he's going to be going to Ryder Cup given his love for golf. I think the thing where this actually does become a story, a bigger story, and again, I'm not trying to make this political, just reporting what has been reported or stating what's been reported, is that the USTA put out a statement once he was, and I was at the last time Trump was at the Arthur Ashe Stadium was in 2015, Venus and Serena playing at Ashe.
Mm-hmm.
I was at that match. He was there. He was when he was running for president. He was booed like brutally. And so he probably remembers that. And it's a New York crowd. So I think the expectation was that he could be booed, but he's going to have some fans there, of course, some people that are supporters of the president. But USTA put out a statement saying that they had asked ESPN to not cover anything that's a potential disruption. I found that a little curious.
I found it tacky.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to show him. They showed him during the national anthem. And it sounded like muted, maybe some cheering. But then you saw these videos of him being booed.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that it's ESPN was the one that would have worried about that. Because it wouldn't at all surprise me that they felt pressure that they couldn't show anything booing because what they might hear because of how this particular administration deals with the media. So the USTA, it seemed to me, would be the easier one because ESPN doesn't want to be accused of censorship. And I'm going down a weird Pablo Torre rabbit hole here potentially myself. Anyway, the U.S. Open, love this event. The final day didn't mess it up. Congratulations to Sabalenka and Alcaraz. You know, Sabalenka and I are pretty tight from meeting at F1 races, but, you know, that's a whole nother story.
Is she taller? Is she taller than you?
She is not taller than me. I have photos to prove it,
but
she is tall.
But is she close in height to you?
She's close in height to me.
You 6'1", 6'2"?
I'm 6'3". There you go.
Wow.
The story I liked the most coming out of this U.S. Open was Amanda Anisimova, the American player who lost 6-0, 6-0, 06-06, I guess she lost, to Iga Świątek, the Polish player, who she comes back and beats, and she had beaten Sabalenka in Wimbledon to get to the finals. She makes it back to a final after being just crushed at Wimbledon and plays a pretty good match against Sabalenka. But Sabalenka ends up winning in 2 sets and is the world number one. Anyway, I love that story. Hats off to Amanda. I thought that was pretty amazing. And the U.S. Open apparently set records From an attendance standpoint, I haven't seen the television numbers yet, but I have to think they were pretty solid.
Well, they added another day. Yeah, I think I'm not going to be so bold as to say American women's tennis is back, but there are some. They are, whether it's Anisimova, whether it's Coco Gauff, whether it's Pegula. There are a lot of the young woman who made a nice run, whose name is escaping. Taylor Townsend.
Who loaded.
Yeah, so watch out, tennis world, for U.S. women going forward. I think there's some great stories to be told going forward. I want to go back and I want to say that the only time that I think it was worth it to have a president on site for a game was the first game back after 9/11, when George Bush came out and threw the first pitch at Yankee Stadium, and the dude threw a strike with a Kevlar vest on.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm getting chills thinking about that now, almost
pretty amazing.
24 years later.
Yeah.
That was the only time where I thought the nation really needed something like that. And I don't think anybody was in the stadium that night. I was not there, but anybody who was there probably did not complain about that.
Good time to have the president be a baseball man, right?
Yeah, exactly. And apparently when he was back in the tunnel warming up with Derek Jeter, Jeter said, "Don't bounce it. This crowd will boo you."
And he threw it from the rubber, right?
Oh, yeah. He threw a strike. And it was pretty cool. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay, a couple things from my side. Big shout out, past guest, CEO of USA Lacrosse, Mark Riccio, got his contract extended, much deserved, through 2028. He's doing great work over there, and was happy to see that.
Yeah, and I think you're also giving him a shout out because he did comment on the podcast on LinkedIn yesterday. But I've known Mark for a long time, and he's great, and it's so well deserved. And I saw Mark earlier in the summer, and I say this in a good way. He was talking to me, but what he was asking me is, "Have you seen so and so? Have you seen so and so?" Because he was trying to talk to stakeholders in the sport. And that's what he does. And I think that's one of the things he's done really, really well, is pulled together a lot of disparate stakeholders. And then just one quick shout out to the Premier Lacrosse League, which set up an activation at the Oculus down at the World Trade Center, near the World Trade Center in New York City. And they've got their championship game this Sunday out at Sports Illustrated Stadium. Unfortunately, I cannot make it to the game, but that's going to be a fantastic lacrosse game.
Yeah. Want to give a couple quick things. Big news that I'm looking for in F1 world, we talk about it a lot, that their U.S. TV deal could be announced here pretty soon. We expect it to be going to Apple, which will be a very, very interesting play for this particular series and where they're going in terms of engaging with their fans, coming off of the fact that Apple was behind the F1, the movie. So looking forward to that. Also in F1, and this is big news, Tim, the Colton Herta, the American driver, is leaving IndyCar, where he's been very successful, to become the reserve driver, test and reserve driver for Cadillac F1, the new entry in 2020 F1. And he's going to plan to race F2, which is the series down from Formula One. Why is this significant? To me, this is the move to train the American driver, the driver that's been identified as possibly moving him over, getting his super license points, etc. Cadillac F1 has announced Valtteri Bottas and Checo Perez as their drivers next year, two veteran drivers that have won in Formula One. Makes all the sense. They come out of the box with drivers that have some experience, but there's nothing super new and fresh about those guys. Colton Herta, an American driver for Cadillac F1, the supposed American, or one of the American, because Haas is an American-based team as well, but with Cadillac behind it, it feels a lot more American, so that could be big. F1 also announced that Monaco will be back for like 1,000 more years, so that's big news for Formula One fans as well.
I wanted to ask you about that real quickly. We just have another minute or two before we got to sign off. But the criticism of Monte Carlo is it's not exciting racing. But I think when you think of Monte Carlo, you think of a couple of things. You think of Grace Kelly, you think of James Bond and Casino Royale, and you think of an F1 race. I mean, in your mind, does the cachet of being in Monte Carlo outweigh maybe the lack of competitive racing that goes
Yes.
on in that particular race.
1,000%.
Yeah.
It's not even a question. It's so important to the image of Formula One. It's basically it's like Hershey having a store in Times Square.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's a branding thing at this point. It
It's
helps
like-
set the image.
It's like PBR coming to Madison Square Garden.
Right.
Shunk Lee's in a past guest.
Right.
He's told me that doesn't make money for them, but they have to be in the largest media market in the
The
world.
scene is so wonderful. The racing is so awful.
Do you find it difficult at your size to find a tuxedo to fit before you go into?
I don't know. Dude, when I've gone to Monaco, I'm working so hard. I'm not thinking I'm not having tux.
So you're not.
I'm a work. No,
You're not having your martinis shaken
No.
out start.
No, but it's a pretty amazing place. Real quick, also with the WNBA playoffs starting this weekend, I'm looking forward to that. Caitlin Clark has announced recently that she's not coming back. Indiana did make it last spot, I think, into the playoffs. Will be without Caitlin Clark, but this is all tied together because there's this possible W work stoppage that we may be seeing. Unrivaled. The 3-on-3 league formed by 𝗕𝗫𝗄𝗽 𝗪𝗏 and Breanna Stewart, they've announced new investment. They announced that they are expanding with teams. I'm interested to see if Caitlin Clark, who's going to need to get some reps because she's been out so far, decides to go that direction, or does she play with Athletes Unlimited, which is another, of course, kind of secondary league, if you will. So a lot of stuff still going on in that space. So I just wanted to comment on that as far as stories to be watching.
Yeah, so a couple things. It will be interesting to see what Caitlin Clark does. She's played a lot of basketball over the last 5 years, 6 years. So maybe she wants to rest and let her body recover. Then the question is, and I've gone on record as saying I would not be surprised. I would be surprised if there's not a work stoppage in the WNBA, whether it's a lockout or a strike. Whether or not it impacts games next season remains to be seen. But I could imagine a scenario in which, if it is a prolonged work stoppage, that the people at Unrivaled can pretty easily expand that from a 3-on-3 format
Good
to
call,
a regular to 5-on-5.
Yeah.
Very easily.
Right.
It's not like they'd have to reconfigure courts or playing surfaces, and there's plenty of venues that would rent to them. That'd be interesting. That's going to be a really interesting spot. I think to follow, a story to follow. So we'll see.
I agree. That's it.
Wow.
No guest, no problem. Sort of. So we close the book on this. This is our 126th episode. And speaking of, I don't think we gave our 125th episode last week adequate reverence, by the way. It was a good one.
I read a statistic once that like over 90% of podcasts don't get past like 5 or 10 episodes.
No, we're so in the top 20%.
Our hubris and arrogance is working because we think that we are like the best podcast in the world. Like, yeah, Pablo Torre's okay. So, wait, what?
Yeah,
DP McGee, the Kelsey brothers.
Once we're on Meadowlark Media,
Mm-hmm.
Dan Lee-Batard.
Yeah. No, I think we fill a niche.
No.
I don't know what that niche is, but we fill it.
So thank you to all of you that spend a little time with us during your weeks. It's much, much appreciated. We'll be back next week with an incredible Brandside guest. Very excited about that. Keep up with us by checking in at dpandmcgee.com. That's where you can get everything, our social handles, our latest episodes, etc. All right? So until then, I'm DP. He's McGee. We'll talk soon.